Remind everybody the emails that Bloomberg got access to and what you guys have been going through.
Yeah, that's right. It's been one of the highlights of my 20 years in journalism to be a part of this team with Surya Matu and Jason Leopold and Ava Benny Morris and many others. So, Epstein, who remains so profoundly central to the public imagination and yet such a profound enigma, Bloomberg News obtained thousands, more than 10,000, more than 18,000 emails. And I want to be clear, these are private emails. These aren't things that have been recycled through. It's not things everyone knows about. This is new stuff, and it's from a private email address. Actually, for example, there was one email where someone says, "Listen, I need to talk to you about something private. What email would be good?" And he writes back and says, "This one," to give you a sense of what we're talking about here. And my colleagues, including Harry Wilson and others, did some really remarkable reporting on Peter Mendelsohn, who lost his job as the UK ambassador to the United States.
Exactly.
In the wake of their story. And Ava Benny Morrison and Jason Leopold have done, and others have done great work on Ghislaine Maxwell and really carefully showing that her relationship to Epstein was just much deeper and their partnership was much closer than either had admitted. And what this story, which I wrote with this wonderful team, what this story is about is, in some ways, I hope, not the usual. Epstein is, of course, in some ways a story about sex and sex crimes. But I think what you'll find is that what this story is about is about what I cover. It's really a story about money and a story about power and a story about connections. And that's how we talked about it with our editors, including Lauren Eder.
And it's can I just pop in that there's a bunch of people pictures, and I'll be honest with you, I think when we both look, I didn't recognize most of them.
Well, that's what I think was so notable about this. I mean, there are certainly the names that have been associated with Epstein for years, like Alan Dershowitz, for example. Right. And there's new information, new emails from there, and a conversation that your team had with him about that. But there's also a name that I'd never seen before, Mary Spaeth, somebody who's a crisis strategist. She was director of media relations at one time for the White House under Ronald Reagan. What role did she serve?
Well, thanks for that question, because I think what's special about the piece, and I hope viewers and listeners check it out, I think what makes it a valuable piece of journalism, especially at this moment when Epstein is really in the news and is all of a sudden has gone from being an exclamation point to a real question mark. I think there are a lot of questions about what's going to happen now over the next few days and weeks and months with Epstein and his files. What our story is about and why Mary Spaeth comes up is that it's about the depth and the breadth of his relationships. And, it is not a story about Republicans versus a story about Democrats. It's a story about powerful people. And it's a story about different kinds of power. It's a story about academics and researchers, people who make it into high elite echelons of the intellectual life. It's about people who offer, like Mary Spaeth offers, basically strategy for people who are in trouble, crisis strategy, public relations. And it's a story about counselors and lawyers. And to answer your question about Mary, there was a point, believe it or not, where investigators are closing in on Jeffrey Epstein. This is early 2008. He's about to go to jail for it's like about a year. It's a little bit longer than a year.
Right.
And after that, he's a free man for a very long time, I think about a decade, until the 2019 charge, sex trafficking. And then he dies. He's found dead in prison or jail right after that. But back in 2008, investigators are circling. Epstein's in trouble. And what do we find in these emails? But these draft apology options where she sends him 3 different kinds of apologies. One is one's very meek. It talks about his memories of being a kid. It's actually, I found it very deep. I imagine, all of us remember being kids and having to apologize. Second one is very short. It's really terse. But the third one, it's the word we use is elegiac, and it is. He cites William James. I'm hoping it's the first Bloomberg News story that calls out William James, 19th century American philosopher. Talks about the hour of terror and the hour of satiety. How about that word? And he talks about the American dream. talks about the American dream and its substantial rewards. And he says this is a public and heartfelt apology.
I just want to say Spaeth's firm was hired through a lawyer to provide communications options for Mr. Epstein and his legal team. She said in response to questions for the story, she said, quote, "I ultimately terminated the engagement because of my discomfort with it."
That's right. That's right. Thanks for saying that. I think it's really important out of fairness that we add things like that. And you know, she also said, you know, because of confidentiality and privilege, she can't comment further. But, you know, we don't know what was going on here. I want to be clear with our viewers.
Right.
You know, for all we know, Epstein was really very close to saying sorry, but he did not. He did not in the sense of giving a broad apology, certainly to his victims. And I want to be clear, the U.S. Department of Justice says there are more than 1,000 of them. More than 1,000 of them. And Epstein did not give a heartfelt William James quoting apology as far as we know. But our story shows what it could have potentially sounded like if he had.